All right, Saagar, what's on your radar?
Well, to impeach or not impeach, it's the question Democrats are quickly facing down the barrel, and an important one for all of us, Republican, Democrat, Independent alike. There's no question that what Trump did when he asked his supporters to march on the Capitol is the worst thing he's ever done. It rises almost certainly to the criteria where the question can at least be debated before Congress much more legitimately than denying military aid to Ukraine. But the question to me is threefold. What does impeachment actually mean? What are the pitfalls of this decision? Are there better alternatives? I know that this is contentious, and many of you feel very passionately, but I ask you to hear me out and accept that I'm not coming at this to defend Trump in any way, but because I want to live ultimately in a more harmonious and prosperous country, which includes many Republicans, even if you don't want it to. So let's start with the meaning of impeachment. This one is where things get really tricky. Technically, a president of the United States can be impeached if he's committed a crime. Practically, let's all be honest, impeachment is a political act. There's a reason that it's extraordinarily difficult for it to happen, and on a practical level, what it means is that our elected House of Representatives are removing from office a democratically elected president of the United States. On a merits level, almost every recent president of the United States has committed an impeachable offense, at least in name. Obama and his administration were caught red-handed lying about mass surveillance by Edward Snowden. George W. Bush and his administration lied us into war. Bill Clinton literally lied under oath about Monica Lewinsky. H.W. Bush was much more involved in Iran-Contra than people like to remember. And of course, Reagan literally presided over it. But in none of those cases was impeachment really considered, except in the case of Clinton, where it backfired massively in terms of public opinion. Why? Because impeachment of a sitting president must rise to the level not where just a majority of the public thinks that you need to go, but where the vast majority of Americans think that you have to. We don't live in a direct democracy where we're ruled by the tyranny of the slight majority. And the truth is, we're just not there yet. Only 56% of Americans think Trump should be impeached from office. This is according to an immediately taken ABC News poll. You could say, well, yeah, that's a lot, and it is, but it's still barely half the country. We can't be in a situation where the view of the slight majority is enough to remove somebody from office. More importantly, what do the other half think? Well, 69% of Republicans told economist YouGov that Trump is either not much to blame or not at all to blame for the violence at the Capitol Dome, with the vast majority in the latter category. And while they disapprove of his actions, they do not rise at all to the levels of removal, according to these people. This is the critical statistic because you can remove Trump from office, but you cannot disenfranchise his voters or the opposition party in the future. A Quinnipiac poll came out yesterday, showed similar results. It says 73% of Republican voters think Trump is protecting, not undermining democracy, and holds a 71% approval rating within the party, higher than George W. Bush did at the end of his presidency. In fact, if you want them to feel literally under siege, removing their voice from Twitter, removing the man that they supported for president, and more, it's a surefire way to turn their temperature up for retribution and violence, even more so. This is one of the biggest pitfalls of an impeachment decision, especially one taken up after Trump has left office. But the other is also important, as I said yesterday. I don't like Joe Biden, I didn't vote for him for president, and I exposed many of the terrible things that he has done and is likely to do here all the time. That said, I want him to be a successful president. I genuinely want him to fulfill his dream of uniting America and turning down the temperature. And one thing I know for certain is that pursuing an impeachment of your predecessor is one of the exact opposite ways of doing that. Joe Biden would be a fool to want impeachment to dominate the national conversation at any time in his presidency. It would keep the right firmly united in almost total opposition to him. It would feel to many Republicans that his first official act is persecuting someone that they have deep faith in. And more importantly, we all know Washington can only do one thing at a time. The opportunity cost of pursuing this, instead of so many other things that he could do to better lives of all Americans, would be immense. This is the real alternative to impeachment for Joe Biden and the Democrats. If they want to make sure Trump and the Republican Party are not in power again in 4 years, they are far better off passing $2,000 stimulus checks and effectively distributing that vaccine. If they can do that, they will sweep the 2022 midterms, they'll preside over a booming economy, and no matter what Trump is doing out there, they will win. Lost in so much of the discourse appears to be this. Guys, Trump lost. By narrow margins, yeah, but he still lost the Electoral College by a lot and the popular vote by a sizable majority. Trump's bullshit actually cost him hundreds of thousands of votes across Arizona, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Michigan. A deep suspicion I have of all of this is that the Democrats and many corporate Republicans are on board the impeachment train because they themselves do not actually want to do anything to ameliorate their role in creating a mass credibility crisis that we have in America towards the elite. So what I'm really saying is that impeachment in a lot of ways is the easy way out. You can ban Trump from seeking office again, but you can't ban the millions who hate Washington from voting the way that they did last time. Yes, Trump being around sucks, frankly. He will suck the oxygen out of the room on the right and the left. But he's a living, breathing reminder of their failure. It's always been, frankly, the only redeeming thing about him. And I think that to move forward, we need to demand our leaders solve the very problems that got us to a legitimacy crisis amongst huge segments of the population. Perhaps it is possible to even, if Trump is impeached. But I simply don't see it, especially without Joe Biden at the helm. So to actually unite the country, our government must move past the culture war, materially benefit the lives of its citizens. It's literally the only way, in my opinion, to get back to any semblance of unity left in America. I believe strongly that impeachment will detract from that, just as it did the last time around. And that if there is a choice to be made, then that choice should be in the next term to calm things down, to better people's livelihood, and to move past this long national nightmare. And Crystal, I mean, we just talked here about, I know we feel differently, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But we just talked here about Trump, the Deutsche Bank, PGA. His life is over. Everything he enjoyed about his life, it's done. He will live ensconced within the walls of Mar-a-Lago and will be hated by elite society for all time. He lost the presidency in disgrace, exited it by inciting a mob on Capitol Hill. Many people want to see him pay, and I understand that. But there is something bigger here at play. And I think that that is where I look to. And I see these numbers amongst Republicans. So many of these are good people. They just they either don't want to accept that Trump was responsible. They want to point to the left. We have been divided so much. I just don't want to see that harden. And I think that this would harden this. But as you said, and I think you made a good point, there is no way of predicting it. Right. There is no way to know. Well, it certainly could. Maybe it wouldn't backfire. I have no idea. Yeah. But I have a strong suspicion that it would.
So I know your objections are in good faith. And I think you make really good points that are worthy of consideration. Let me first say that if it was me, like, running the congressional Democratic strategy, impeachment would not actually be my preferred move. My preferred move would be the 14th Amendment, which seems to be more directly relevant to inciting an insurrection. It can be passed with majority vote. It would take up less time than the Joe Biden administration. I personally think that that's the superior path to pursue. Mm-hmm. However, if it's impeachment that is on the table, I just look at it a lot more simply. On the merits. Does he deserve it? Yeah, he 100% does, especially the more that comes out. Not just about that day, which we were both reading this article about, Kellyanne Conway and Kevin McCarthy and Mike Pence, where he was locked down with his wife, worried about his life, calling the president, begging him to do something. And they could barely twist his arm after hours to do anything. That terrible video that he recorded, that was the third take. That was the best of the things that he said that day. That was the best they could get out of him. So I just look at it really simply. You're right. This isn't really about Trump. And if you think, and this is actually what I'm talking about on my radar, if you think that censuring him or moving him from office or taking away his banking or any of that is a real answer, then you're a fool. But I see it in the same way as this is bigger than Trump. You can't allow a president of the United States to help incite an insurrection and just be like, well, we wish he wouldn't have, but we're going to move forward. Yeah. And I think that the logic around, the number of Republicans who see him as protecting democracy, I think it's a little circular. Because why do they think that? It's in large part because of people like Hawley and Cruz and all these other morons who went along with this crap. So if they're spouting it from the Capitol, the Republican base looks at this and goes, there must be something there because these people are telling me that there's something there. And similarly here, if they say, the president's not really to blame, let's just come together and let's forget about it and send the past and move forward. And what about the Democrats? Aren't they terrible? Then they're going to continue to think, the president didn't really do anything wrong here. And we've already seen how they're starting to rewrite history. So I think it's a circular logic here. At a certain point, this country has to have some freaking self-respect. You can't just be treated like a abused dog and keep coming back and back and back and never exacting any consequences. You're right. Trump is going to face real personal life consequences, but every one of these members of Congress, take the democracy, take the country, the like high-minded principles out of this. Every one of these people had their lives put in danger by this man. They need to have some self-respect, if nothing else, to have some do what they can to censure this man and send a message that this is not acceptable in this country going forward. So again, look, if it was up to me, impeachment isn't actually the remedy that I would pursue. And if I was in Congress, I wouldn't be out front like drafting the articles and all of that. Would I vote for it? 100%. Because again, I think we can get too cute with like this scenario, that scenario, how it's going to play on, et cetera. I think you have to at some point just look at the merits and vote according to your moral conscience and what you think is right, because we have no clue how this is all going to play out.
I think that's a fair point, but it's like I said, almost every single one of our modern presidents has committed some sort of impeachable offense by any definition of the standard. And on the merits, that'd be fine.
But you can't,
right?
and look,
that's part of what I'm saying.
I don't think there's an equivalency. I would say, I think Bush did commit things that, were worthy of impeachment. We can debate that another time, and I don't want to create an equivalency between these things. But to make the argument of like, well, there wasn't accountability in the past, so we can never have accountability going forward, I also don't think it's just like
I think it's fair.
I don't think that's a good argument.
If we look in our past, there were many times, for example, I know this is going to get some people hot, but look, by all merits, we had the rights to hang all of the Confederate generals and to hang Jeff Davis and all these other people. And Lincoln, our greatest president, was like, no, we're not going to do that. Because at the end of the day, we just need, that's what was going to happen. Or shot, like whatever. I would love to see it. I'll be honest with you. But probably in the long term, he made the right decision. Lincoln, for that reason, was like, look, just let him go. Amnesty, we're going to turn everything down. We fought a terrible war. And I'm not saying this is equivalent. I'm not saying Trump is equivalent to Jeff Davis.
Right.
What I'm saying is there is a sizable portion of this country, 73%, who approve of Donald Trump. 43% or 46% don't want him removed from office. The idea that impeaching him would convince them that he was wrong or that he did anything wrong, it's the opposite. I know that. We know in general how they react towards this news. It would feel as if midst of a large persecution crisis, especially amidst all of what we see right now. And within that context, I would say Joe Biden, to fulfill his mandate to the extent that there is one, turn things down, pass the checks, distribute the vaccine. I cannot think of anything better. He already has several 100,000 Republicans who voted for him for president.
Yeah.
And now he could get more. He could be the most popular president of my lifetime by doing the most basic, bare minimum things. And I don't like Joe Biden, but I got to say, he embraced $2,000 checks. The Republicans shot themselves in the foot and lost these Georgia Senate races. He actually has an opportunity. And if they screw that up, that's on them.
Well, the truth is that this isn't really about Joe Biden or on Joe Biden. This is on the Republicans.
Yes.
I mean, the Democrats are on board. Biden is sort of demurred about what his preferences are here. But clearly the Democrats are going to vote articles of impeachment through the House. And then it's really on the Senate Republicans. And, do I think it's likely they're going to convict? No, I think it's highly unlikely. We've only had even a few that have indicated that they were open to voting to convict on impeachment. But this doesn't have to take a million years at all. McConnell's dragging his feet because, of course, he wants to hamstring the Biden administration, just like you're saying. So he's dragging feet. He's saying, like, oh, we can't do it until, weeks from now and the Senate's back in session, ignoring the fact that if he wanted to start immediately, of course, he absolutely could. But this doesn't have to take long. These articles of impeachment, it's not like Ukraine where it's all Byzantine and this diplomat and hours of testimony, investigation, all of this. The articles are really simple. They're really straightforward. It's like 3 pages. The trial doesn't have to take a million years either. We were all there. We all witnessed it. We've heard the phone call to the Georgia Secretary of State, all that stuff. So the idea that you can't ultimately do both, handle them in short order, and then move forward, I just don't buy that that's the case.
Possible.
And you're right. Look, ultimately, again, is this an answer? Is this even, if I was in Congress, what I would be focusing most of my time, attention, and platform on? No, because I think Trump is this shiny, bright object distraction, horrible as he is and as outrageously culpable as he is for everything that we've seen in this country over the past 4 years. He's really not the root of the problem. If the country was healthy, we wouldn't have freaking Donald Trump in position to do this nonsense, pull this nonsense either.
People sacrificing their lives for no reason.
Right, exactly. So, but this all comes back to like all of the people that enabled this behavior to get to this place. And if even now, even when their own like lives and some of their family members were put at risk and they're like being harassed in airports and all of this crap, like if even now you're not going to tell the truth about what happened and what reality is, then yeah, you kind of deserve to be in this position, Republican Party.
It's a tough time. All right, I'm looking forward to your radar next, Crystal.